Good evening, and welcome to Restored Lore, your home for old, odd, and obscure stories. Tonight we have the old Romanian folktale of the story of the half-man riding on the worse half of a lame horse. This story was documented by Ignácz Kúnos and translated into English by Robert Nisbet Bain, published in Turkish Fairy Tales in 1901. I felt like it was time for something a bit lighter and more playful, and I found this story kind of weird and charming. I hope you enjoy it. Now, let's open our imaginations and begin. Once upon a time, long, long ago, in the days when poplars bore pears and rushes violets, when bears could switch themselves with their tails like cows, and wolves and lambs kissed and cuddled each other, there lived an emperor whose hair was already white, and who yet had never a son to bless himself with. The poor emperor would have given anything to have had a little son of his own like other men, but all his wishes were in vain. At last, when he was quite an old man, fortune took pity on him also, and a darling of a boy was born to him, the like of which the world had never seen before. The emperor gave him the name of Aleodor, and gathered east and west, north and south together to rejoice in his joy at the child's christening. The revels lasted 3 days and 3 nights, and all the guests who made merry there with the emperor could think of nothing else for the rest of their lives. But the lad grew up strong as an oak and lovely as a rose, while his father, the emperor, grew nearer every day to the edge of the grave. And when the hour of his death arrived, he took the child on his knees and said to him, "My darling son, behold, the Lord calls me. The moment is at hand when I am to share the common lot of man. I foresee that thou wilt become a great man, and though I be dead, my bones will rejoice in the tomb at thy noble deeds. As to the administration of this realm, I need tell thee not, for thou, with thy wisdom, wilt know how it behooves a king to rule. One thing there is, nevertheless, that I must tell thee. Dost thou see that mountain over yonder? Beware of ever setting thy foot upon it, for 'twill be to thy hurt and harm. The mountain belongs to the half-man riding on the worse half of a lame horse, and whosoever ventures upon that mountain cannot escape unscathed." He had no sooner said these words than his throat rattled thrice, and he gave up the ghost. He departed to his place like every other human soul that is born into the world, though there was never emperor like him since the world began. Those of his household bewailed him, his great nobles bewailed him, his people bewailed him also, and then they had to bury him. Aleodor, from the moment that he ascended the throne of his father, ruled the land wisely, like a mature statesman, though in age he was but a child. All the world delighted in his sway, and men thanked heaven for allowing them to live in the days of such a prince. All the time that was not taken up by affairs of state, Aleodor spent in the chase. But he always bore in mind the precepts of his father, and took care not to exceed the bounds which had been set him. One day, however, how it came about I know not, but anyhow he fell into a brown study, and never noticed that he had overstepped the domains of the half-man, till, after taking a dozen steps or so onwards, he found himself face to face with the monster. That he was trespassing on the grounds of this stunted and terrible creature did not trouble him overmuch. It was the thought that he had transgressed the dying command of his dear father that grieved him. "Ho, ho!" cried the hideous monster.
Dost thou not know that every scoundrel who oversteps my bounds becomes my property?"
"Yes," replied Eleodor, "but I must tell thee that it was through want of thought, and without wishing it, that I have trodden on thy ground. Against thee I have no evil design at all."
"I know better than that," replied the monster. "But I see that, like all cowards, thou dost think it best to make excuses."
"Nay, so sure as God preserves me, I am no coward. I have told thee the simple truth. But if thou wouldst fight, I am ready. Choose thy weapons. Shall we slash with sabres, or slog with clubs, or wrestle together?"
"Neither one nor the other," replied the monster. "One way only canst thou escape thy just punishment. Thou must fetch me the daughter of the Green Emperor."
Eleodor would very much have liked to get out of the difficulty some other way, as affairs of state would not allow him to take so long a journey on which he could find no guide to direct him. But what did the monster know of all that? Eleodor felt that if he would avoid the shame of being thought a robber and a trampler on the rights of others, he must indeed find the daughter of the Green Emperor. Besides, he wanted to escape with a whole skin if he could, so at last he promised that he would do the service required of him. Now, the half-man riding on the worse half of a lame horse knew very well that, as a man of honor, Eleodor would never depart from his plighted word, so he said to him,
"Go now, in God's name, and may good luck attend thee."
So Eleodor departed. He went on, thinking over and over again how he was to accomplish his task, and so keep his word, when he came to the margin of a pond, and there he saw a pike dashing its life out on the shore. He immediately went up to it to satisfy his hunger with it, when the pike said to him, "Slay me not, boy beautiful, but cast me rather back into the water again, and then I will do thee good whenever thou dost think of me." Eleodor listened to the pike and threw it back into the water again. Then the pike said to him again, "Take this scale, and whenever thou dost look at it and think of me, I will be with thee." Then the youth went on further, and marveled greatly at such a strange encounter. Presently he fell in with a crow that had one wing broken. He would have killed the crow and eaten it, but the crow said to him,
"Boy beautiful, boy beautiful, why wilt thou burden thy soul on my account? Far better were it if thou didst bind up my wing, and much good will I requite thee with for thy kindness."
Eleodor listened, for his heart was as kind as his hand was cunning, and he bound up the crow's wing. When he made ready to go on again, the crow said to him,
"Take this feather, thou gallant youth, and whenever thou dost look at it and think of me, I will be with thee."
Then Eleodor took the feather and went on his way. He hadn't gone 100 paces further when he stumbled upon an ant. He would have trodden upon it when the ant said to him, "Spare my life, Emperor Eleodor, and I'll deliver thee also from death. Take this little bit of membrane from my wing, and whenever thou dost think of me, I'll be with thee." When Eleodor heard these words, and how the ant called him by his name, he raised his foot again and let the ant go where it would. He also went on his way, and after journeying for I know not how many days, he came at last to the palace of the Green Emperor. There he knocked at the door, and stood waiting for someone to come out and ask him what he wanted. He stood there 1 day, he stood there 2 days, but as for anyone coming out to ask him what he wanted, there was no sign of it. When the 3rd day dawned, however, the Green Emperor called to his servants and gave them a talking to that they were likely to remember.
"How comes it," said he, "that a man should be standing at my gates 3 days without anyone going out to ask him what he wants? Is this what I pay you wages for?"
The servants of the Green Emperor looked up, and they looked down, but they had not one word to say for themselves. At last they went and called Aleador and led him before the emperor.
"What dost thou want, my son?" inquired the emperor, "and wherefore art thou waiting at the gates of my court?"
"I have come, great emperor, to seek thy daughter."
"Good, my son. But first of all we must make a compact together, for such is the custom of my court. Thou must hide thyself wheresoever thou wilt 3 times running. If my daughter finds thee all 3 times, thy head shall be struck off and stuck on a stake, the only one out of 100 that has not a suitor's head upon it. But if she does not find thee thrice, thou shalt have her from me with all imperial courtesy."
"My hope, great emperor, is in the Lord, who will not allow me to perish. We will put something else on this stake of thine, but not the head of a man. Let us make the compact."
"Thou dost agree?"
"I agree." So they made them a compact, and the deeds were drawn out and signed and sealed. Then the daughter of the emperor met him next day, and it was arranged that he should hide himself as best as he could. But now he was in an agony that tortured him worse than death, for he bethought him again and again where and how he could best hide himself, for nothing less than his head was at stake. And as he kept walking about and brooding and pondering, he remembered the pike. Then he took out the fish's scale, looked at it, and thought of the fish's master, and immediately, oh, wonderful, the pike stood before him and said, "What dost thou want of me, boy beautiful?" "What do I want? Thou mayst well ask. Look at what has happened to me. Canst thou not tell me what to do?"
"That is thy business no longer. Leave it to me."
And immediately striking Aleador with his tail, he turned him into a little shellfish and hid him among the other little shellfish at the bottom of the sea. When the damsel appeared, she put on her eyeglass and looked for him in every direction, but could see him nowhere. Her other wooers had hid themselves in caves, or behind houses, or under haycocks and haystacks, or in some hole or corner, but Aleador hid himself in such a way that the damsel began to fear that she would be vanquished. Then it occurred to her to turn her eyeglass toward the sea, and she saw him beneath a heap of mussels. But you must know that her eyeglass was a magic eyeglass.
"I see thee, thou rascal," cried she. "How thou hast bothered me, to be sure! From being a man thou hast made thyself a mussel, and hidden thyself at the bottom of the sea."
This he couldn't deny, so of course he had to come up again. But she said to the emperor, "Methinks, dear father, this youth will suit me. He is nice and comely. Even if I find him all 3 times, let me have him, for he is not stupid like the others. Why, thou canst see from his figure even how different he is."
"We shall see," replied the emperor.
On the 2nd day, Aleador bethought him of the crow, and immediately the crow stood before him and said to him,
"What dost thou want, my master?"
"Look now, senseless one, what has happened to me. Canst thou not show me a way out of it?"
"Let us try."
And with that it struck him with its wing and turned him into a young crow and placed him in the midst of a flock of crows that were flying high in the air in the teeth of a fierce tempest. Then the damsel came again with her eyeglass and searched for him in every direction. He was nowhere to be found. She looked for him on the earth, but he was not there. She looked for him in the rivers and in the sea, but he was not there. The damsel grew pensive. She searched and searched till midday, when it occurred to her to look upwards also. And perceiving him in the glory of the sky in the midst of a swarm of crows, she pointed him out with her finger and cried, "Look, look! Rogue that thou art! Come down from there, man, that has made thyself into a bit of a bird. Nothing in the fields of heaven can escape my eye." Then he came down, for what else could he do? Even the emperor himself now began to be amazed at the skill and cunning of Eleodor, and lent an ear to the prayers of his daughter. Inasmuch, however, as the compact declared that Eleodor was to hide 3 times, the emperor said to his daughter, "Wait once more, for I am curious to see what place he will find to hide himself in next." The 3rd day, early in the morning, he thought of the ant, and whisk! The ant was by his side. When she found out what he wanted, she said to him, "Leave it to me, and if she find thee, I am here to help thee." So the ant turned him into a flower seed, and hid him in the very skirts of the damsel without her perceiving it. Then the emperor's daughter rose up, took her eyeglass, and sought for him all day long, but look where she would, she could not find him. She plagued herself almost to death in her search, for she felt that he was close at hand, though see him she could not. She looked through her eyeglass on the ground, and in the sea, and up in the sky, but she could see him nowhere, and towards evening, tired out by so much searching, she exclaimed, "Show thyself then this once. I feel that thou art close at hand, and yet I cannot see thee. Thou hast conquered, and I am thine." Then, when he heard her say that he had conquered, he slipped slowly down from her skirts and revealed himself. The emperor had now nothing more to say, so he gave the youth his daughter, and when they departed, he escorted them to the boundaries of his empire with great pomp and ceremony. While they were on the road, they stopped at a place to rest, and, after they had refreshed themselves somewhat with food, he laid his head in her lap and fell asleep. The daughter of the emperor could not forbear from looking at him, and her eyes filled with tears as they feasted on his comeliness and beauty. Then her heart grew soft within her, and she could not help kissing him. But Eleodor, when he woke, gave her a buffet with the palm of his hand that awoke the echoes. "Nay, but my dear Eleodor," cried she, "thou hast indeed a heavy hand." "I have slapped thee," said he, "for the deed thou hast done, for I have not taken thee for myself, but for him who bade me seek thee." "Good, my brother, but why didst thou not tell me so at home? For then I also would have known what to do. But let it be now, for all that is past." Then they set out again, till they came alive and well to the half-man riding on the worse half of a lame horse. "Lo, now I have done my service," said Eleodor, and with that he would have departed. But when the girl beheld the monster, she shivered with disgust and would not stay with him for a single moment. The hideous monster drew near to the maiden and began to caress her with honeyed words so that she might go with him willingly. But the girl said to him, "Depart from me, Satan, and go to thy mother Hell, who hath cast thee upon the face of the earth." Then the half-monster, half-man was near to melting for the love he had for the damsel, and, writhing away on his belly, he fetched his mother, that she might help to persuade the maid to be his wife. But meanwhile the damsel had dug a little trench all around her, and stood rooted to the spot with her eyes fixed on the ground. The hideous satanic skeleton of a monster could not get at her. "Depart from the face of the earth, thou abomination," cried she. "The world is well rid of such a pestilential monster as thou art." Still he strove and strove to get at her, but finding at last he could not reach her, he burst with rage and fury that a mere woman should have so covered him with shame and reproach. Then Eleodor added the domain of the half-man riding on the worse half of a lame horse to his own possessions, took the daughter of the Green Emperor to wife, and returned to his own empire. And when his people saw him coming back in the company of a smiling spouse as beautiful as the stars of heaven, they welcomed him with great joy, and, mounting once more his imperial throne, he ruled his people in peace and plenty till the day of his death. And now I'll go mount my horse again, and say an Our Father before I go. So there's a bit of a bait and switch here, right? Because I imagine that you, like me, really wanted to hear more about the half man riding on the worst half of a lame horse. Not only do we not get his backstory, we don't even get a proper description of him. All we know is that he's a terrible satanic skeleton monster who, for whatever reason, fell in love with the daughter of the emperor and couldn't get her himself. And then, when he's thwarted by her little trench, he literally bursts in frustration. Also, Eleanor's a bit rough on the princess, isn't he? Aside from that, I quite like the very mannered speech and behavior of these characters and the funny little formalities. The emperor threw a party so good that nobody could think of anything else for the rest of their lives. I think this is our first serious foray into traditional Romanian folklore, and it's lovely. On that note, let's talk about the beautiful boy, Fat Frumos. In the original footnote, the author, or the translator, it's unclear, says that Fet Frumosu is the favorite name for all young heroes in Romanian fairy tales. And while that makes sense, I think a more modern interpretation is that the name is better translated as Prince Charming, and that many Romanian fairy tales are about the various adventures of this Prince Charming. Prince Charming is always challenged with tests and obstacles that have defeated ordinary men, and he always displays courage, justice, loyalty, cleverness, and all the manly virtues. His counterpart is, and I'm really sorry for the pronunciation here, his counterpart is Ileana Kosanziana, a beautiful and good-natured princess who often has magical powers. Her name is variously translated as everything from the good fairy to the girl with the golden hair, and she defeats the forces of evil by being brave, smart, modest, and diligent. And, of course, together they often have to defeat a stereotypical monster. I think the closest monster for this particular story is the Zmew? An anthropomorphic monster. He's usually from the netherworld. He's almost always trying to kidnap a maiden and marry her. I'm not sure if this monster is exactly a Zmew or what that has to do with the title of the story, because a Zmew is usually described as being serpent-like, although it has the head or face of a man and is able to ride a horse. Fascinatingly, in many of the stories, Fat Frumos is often challenged with a major dilemma with unclear outcomes. In one story, when he asks which way he should go, the old woman at the crossroads says, "If you turn right, you will be in sorrow. If you turn left, you will be in sorrow as well." According to Wikipedia, Romanian scholar Victor Kernbach says that this kind of mythical dilemma echoes the history of the Romanian people, who have often been faced with the choice of fighting a battle they can't win or allying with their enemies, and thus they identify with these kind of lose-lose propositions. If you listen all the way to the end of the video, you get to hear me make a little confession. This week's confession is a question. Is anyone else getting a little bit tired of influencers? Like most of us, I have some sort of light parasocial relationships with some YouTubers and whatnot, and I genuinely like these people and I wish them well, but I am getting pretty tired of content that is focused on how great their lives are. I'm not so much of a voyeur as to take a lot of pleasure from watching someone's vacation slides or their home renovation videos or all of these other opportunities and activities that they're enjoying. I mean, I do not resent these people. I'm glad that they're making enough money to really enjoy their lives, but I subscribe to these channels for craft tutorials or history lessons or cooking demos or sewing classes, and I don't really want to see it become a vlog of everything that is cool about their lives. And of course, they have to film these things and make content out of it so they can get the tax benefits. But it feels like a lot of the creators who have been following for a long time are kind of headed that direction, and it's getting tedious. And I mean, of course, nobody stagnates, and I expect people to grow and evolve over time. But a lot of the channels that used to really inspire and motivate me are now just not so much. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Or am I just being grouchy today? If you're a bit grouchy today and you like weird old stories, you have come to the right place. Subscribe to the channel and get old, odd, and obscure stories from me every week. Please also drop me a like or a comment or even share it with a friend. Your feedback is always super interesting to me, and of course, it helps the channel grow. Finally, if you want to support me even further, consider buying me a coffee using a link in the description below. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in a few days.